Virgin Media Shorts, championing undiscovered talent.
Welcome everybody. My name is Caroline Cooper-Charles and I'm the Senior Talent Executive for Creative England, which is the agency responsible for nurturing and developing talent across England but outside of London. I'm sure you're all very excited to be here, as am I, to hear from some of the previous winners of the Virgin Media Shorts. I'm sure they've got lots of helpful advice to impart for anybody who's taken part this year or is thinking about taking part in future years. So I'm joined today by Luke Snellin, who was winner of Virgin Media Shorts in 2009 with Mixtape, and also Jason Wingard, who won 2 years later with a film called 220, but also in between times won the People's Choice Award as well in 2010. So this being a case study, I'm just going to start by asking you guys, before the competition happened, just kind of what you've been up to as filmmakers, how you started off filmmaking, and kind of what stage you were at really when you thought about entering the competition.
That me? Okay.
Yeah.
I was working as a stand-up comic in 2000, and I wasn't very good, so I decided to retrain and do something else, and that's when I started to move into making films. So I went back to university, got on a filmmaking course, and in between that period graduated and started making corporate stuff and educational stuff, and doing some comedy shorts as well in between. And that kind of more or less brings us up to 2010 when I started to enter some of the competitions, which I started to enter because I saw Andrew Gaynord had won in the year that you were in. He won the People's Choice Award.
CGI Brows.
Yeah, he's an old friend of mine. So, and he posted a picture on Facebook with him with Noel Clarke, and he'd put a caption underneath saying, "I can't wait to leave all my old friends behind."
And you thought, I'm going to catch him up.
I thought that was really funny, first of all, knowing Andrew, and then I thought, oh, actually, I'll make a note of that competition. And the year after, we entered.
Okay. And in terms of the stuff that you've been doing before at film school, was that mainly sort of comedy based? Did you got an opportunity to make films yourself while you were at film
I mean,
school?
a lot of the stuff that I was making was comedy because I knew a lot of stand-up comedians, so I could get hold of stand-up comedians to act in, you know, and they're usually pretty good performers, big show-offs. So put a camera in front of them, they're usually pretty good. So that's how I started, making lots of different comedy shorts.
Okay. And Luke, what was your background?
I mean, I guess I first got into it when I was at school, and I took drama at A-level, and my teacher sort of encouraged me, and my form tutor as well, encouraged me to write plays, because I was really doing well in English, but not so well in like science and maths and other subjects. So I started writing these plays, and then this Royal Court Young Writers Programme thing came about, and so I did a workshop in my local area, and that sort of got me the bug for writing. I started writing more and more, and then I sort of was stuck on what to do after that, and then I spoke to my form tutor again, who suggested I do something that combined the writing thing with my other real sort of love, which was film, and essentially just consuming them, and I hadn't really made one at that point. So I went to Bournemouth and did screenwriting, and when I came out of there, I sort of tried to find a job for ages, and then ended up being a carpenter in a hospital for a while just to earn money, and then I finally got this small break, which was going and kind of working in the art department on an American film, which they didn't pay me for, but I sort of saved up enough to go out and do that, so I did that. And then after that, I'd sent out a reel and CV to like hundreds of production companies, and one got in touch. And I started working there as a runner. I think it was pretty unpaid at first, and then like some expenses and stuff. And I made my first short film there, which is a film called Patrick, which is the film I class as sort of the first film I ever really properly made, even though I'd messed about making stuff on camcorders and stuff. And then the next film was Mixtape, which was a year after Patrick, in 2009. So yeah.
Okay. And did you wrote Patrick as well?
Yeah, I guess because I came from that writing background and I'd studied screenwriting, and everything I was doing at university was mainly writing, and then I'd try and make the shorts on the side on the weekend with a camcorder, but never to the sort of production value or the how I wanted them to look. So I felt like I was just basically making up how to direct by watching like extra special features on DVDs, or just essentially just sort of getting on with it really, and just sort of trying stuff out. But I always felt more confident in the writing side of things. And Patrick, the first short I made was ridiculous because we'd somehow managed to get like 10 grand, and we were shooting on film, and we had a crane and all this other stuff that I'd obviously watched like Spielberg special feature and just gone, we have to have a crane arm, and we have to have, we have to shoot on film and all this. And so yeah, I was in at the deep end really. So then when I made Mixtape, it was kind of back to basics, short, 2 minutes, simple. So that was that really.
I'm interested to know, because often people who are starting out at the beginning of their career are also working in the industry in other roles. So as you did, do you think that's a help, or can it be a hindrance sometimes in terms of the way that you're perceived? Do you think it makes you less likely to be taken seriously?
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, I think you've got to be really careful in terms of who people or what people know you as. If they tend to know you as a first AD rather than director, you've got to work really hard to sort of cross over into that discipline. Whereas for me, it started off, and no one knew who I was at that point. I wasn't, I was nowhere near being a filmmaker or a director, because I was just trying to suck up as much information as I could from all the different departments, get experience on set. And I really enjoyed working in the art department. And I think after I started directing, it was a good sort of, I think it was about a year or two that I was still working on side in the art department, but I wasn't sort of actively looking for work. I was just doing it to earn a bit of money, and I was doing it with people that knew me as a director as well. So I didn't have a website that said I was a production designer when all I wanted to do was be a director. But I also first AD'd a lot, to earn money. And I guess, people say you can use another name and stuff like that, but actually I just think when you're ready to really put yourself out there as a director, I think then you sort of have to leave that stuff behind, and then you really have to focus on what you want to do. But it's not easy, because people have got to earn money and, survive essentially, which is really tricky, because you don't get paid for a while when you want to be a director.
Yeah.
But it is useful because you learn a lot.
Yeah, I guess it's an opportunity to watch other directors at work.
Yeah,
as well,
exactly. Yeah.
As well as the DVD extras.
Yeah.
And Jason, did you ever go that crewing route, or did you encounter, kind of different barriers because people perceived you as a corporates director or a...
No, not really. I mean, at university, they'd left me behind as one of their best students to do a corporate job, and they were paying me like a real pittance, and they all went off for the summer, and so I stole that work from them and put it in as a piece of coursework. So I undercut them basically. They were getting 15 grand for the job, and I offered to do it for 9. And that was my platform to get, to go from university and immediately be working basically.
Yeah.
So
very entrepreneurial.
Yeah. From university, from the day that I left university, I was working doing corporate stuff, and then we started doing some things for TV as well. We started to do some comedy shorts. We did a load of we did 20 mobile phone shorts for 2 Entertain and T-Mobile with Johnny Vegas and a load of other comics, all based around a taxi. And that was kind of, so while we were doing the corporate stuff, we were still doing, had our finger in different things as well. And from there, we started doing education packs. And then when the recession hit, one of the directors I was working with said, we've got to get out of this. There's going to be no money. So that was when we made the push to go into shorts, really, kind of like go or to see if we could break into the industry that way.
Okay. So you talked a little bit about how you heard about Virgin Media Shorts. In terms of the idea that you came up with, was that something that you developed specifically kind of to enter for the competition, or is it something that you got kind of
Well, I was
brewing in your
talking
mind
to Luke
anyway?
about that actually, because the 220 in particular it's a bit of a departure from what I normally make, and it was really strategically for the Virgin Media shorts. I mean, we won the People's Choice the year before with Bus Baby, and we came out of the cinema and we knew that, you know, we could just about talk because there's lots of free alcohol there. And I started talking to our sound man, and we started breaking down the things that do well in Virgin Media shorts. And we realised that we weren't going to be able to pull off a love story. And love stories do quite well at Virgin traditionally. And so we decided to do a death story. We kind of like, we said, oh, it'd be really good to do something in real time with, you know, someone who's got 2 minutes and 20 left to live. And so it started the year before, really, the seed of that idea.
Okay. And what about you, Luke, with Mixtape? Was that?
I remember it really well, actually, because there's a director in here, Martin, who's a friend of mine, a very good director as well. And he had entered the year before and told me about the competition. So I knew about it in good time to sort of come up with an idea that would fit the competition, but not. I didn't consider even, you know, I didn't consider genre or story or anything in terms of I'm going to make this film to win. I just thought that's an excuse to make a film, and it won't just sit on my shelf, and it won't just get into like 2 festivals, and you know, it will have a platform. If it gets through, great, but if not, at least there's a reason I've made it, and you know, and if it did win, then there's this incentive of this 30 grand, and I'll get to make another film. And so in my head I was like, right, all those reasons are enough to get off my arse and make something. And I'd just done entered an ad competition, a commercials competition, which we'd amazingly won that, and that paid us like quite a good prize money, you know, cash prize or whatever. So we took some of that money and put that into Mixtape, and so all sort of the planets aligned in a way, because we had the money to make something that I felt, you know, needed a little bit of money, because we had it was a sort of small musical in a way, and there was music in it that was going to be expensive. So we had that money to cover that, and then you know, and just giving it a look and a sort of slightly ambitious cinematic quality that I was really passionate about. But I didn't kind of, you know, it's a really autobiographical story of mine, and that was personal to me and all this stuff. So I don't feel like I crafted it for the competition in terms of the content, but definitely the challenge of doing something in 2 minutes 20 was attractive, and you know, all the the glitz and the sort of, I guess the exposure that it promised as well was really good, because I think filmmakers really need that push into the spotlight sometimes. So, you know, getting an agent and all that other stuff that you need to do at some point is made a lot easier by suddenly, you know, having your film out there. And I think that's one of the reasons I did it as well. Okay.
Well, we're going to now give everybody an opportunity to see both Mixtape and 220. We're going to run those films back to back, so everybody can get a look at what you're talking about.
What can I do for you?
Hi, it's Lillian.
Oh, sorry, she's not. She's at dancing. She'll be home soon, though. Want to come in?
No, it's okay. Could you give her this for me?
Of course. What is it?
It's a mixtape. Some of my dad's old music. She likes it, I think. I was doing it anyway, so I did her a copy. Will you tell her I came round?
Yeah, I'll be sure to.
Tonight, I wonder
baby is tonight. I wonder where my baby's gone. Hope she'll do no wrong. Looking for my baby. She's not around. I wonder where my baby is tonight. I wonder what on earth my baby's doing. If she's not at home, there's trouble brewing. If she really loves me, she'll believe in what I said. I hope that everything's gonna be alright. But I wonder where my baby is tonight.
Two absolutely fantastic films there. Personally, I've seen both of them several times, but I never get tired of watching either of them. I've got a crick in the neck from concentrating again this time. Can you just talk a little bit, maybe starting with you, Luke, on what, once you kind of heard you'd won the competition, kind of what happened then and what that meant to you? What impact did it have?
As soon as I knew I'd won and it started to sink in that night. I mean, it didn't completely sink in until sort of sometime afterwards. And I think all the significant developments in my career didn't happen that night specifically, but that's obviously what kick-started them. But afterwards, the head of the Directors Guild came up to me and offered me a membership to that, and other things, agents and I remember I met Rebecca Mark Lawson that night. And she told me that she was going to be working on the next film I was going to do, which was really exciting, and talking to the previous winners and Noel Clarke as well, who was brilliant, and and I've seen him since other stuff, and he's always been like the loveliest person to see when you're not, when you're in a room full of sort of heavy hitters. He's always a really nice face that will, remind you of the fact that you were once sort of just a nobody, and then Anyway, so yeah, but about, I reckon a week or a couple of weeks after that, stuff started to come in, like opportunities here and there. And I think, I was very careful to look at everyone, you know, and take each one on its own merit and make sure it was something that I wanted to do. And I think with mixtape, going back to what you said before as well, I feel like I'd sort of started to find my voice when I made that film. Like after it was finished, it was the only thing I'd made at that point that I felt like I was pretty happy with. And so I wanted to make sure that the next thing I did and everything I did after that would be in keeping with that, and I wouldn't do anything that I would be ashamed of or that I wouldn't feel was in keeping with what I wanted to do. So I was looking at all these opportunities that were coming in, and then the significant ones happened after the film got BAFTA nominated the following year, which was again another huge boost for the profile of the film and for me. But the main things that happened were I got an agent, and you know, I started getting meetings purely based on that film and the Virgin prize and the BAFTA nomination. And I signed to a commercials company as well. That was the other main thing that happened. And they ended up producing my next short after this, and are now developing and are going to be producing the feature that I'm working on as well. So and also, you know, they helped me to get commercials work and music video work, and I sort of started to take this idea of what a filmmaker is and actually turn that into a career then, and start actually. That's when I left behind first ADing and production designing and actually just became a director or a writer-director full-time. So.
Could you afford to do that?
Not well, kind of. I managed to survive from then on, and I would say, you know, it's been, what has it been, like 3.5 years or something, approaching 4 probably. And I think only in the last 2 years have I been able to actually properly survive. I mean, in the early days it was literally surviving by the skin of my teeth. But you know, you might get 1 or 2 commercials a year or something, and then the rest is kind of up for grabs. You just got to do what you can. And so yeah, that was kind of what happened. But you know, it just helps. It just helps you get in a room. It gives you something to talk about, and it instantly makes people think, well, this person might be interesting to meet because they've already got one of their films through this selection process, and that someone said that film is the winner, or you know, whatever of that competition. So it's another string to your bow, really, I guess.
Did you find it to be a similar experience, Jason, in terms of it being a fast tracking to certain things?
I think it's only when you reflect on it that you kind of, you know, you go, oh, I've met loads of people that I wouldn't have had the chance to meet,
Right.
you know, if I hadn't won Virgin. It was slightly different because I'd gone in the year before, so I knew what to expect on the night, and that kind of made it worse in a way, because you were just going through, you know, you run through all of the scenarios, and you know you can't really take it, you know, you think you might have a chance, you don't know whether you've won, and so it's a bit of relief really when we won. And once again got to meet Rebecca, and Rebecca had told us about all the films, you know, but Rebecca curates and watches all of the films coming in for Virgin shorts, doesn't she? And she'd watched other shorts of mine, and she'd told, you know, so because I'd put in 7 different films, and she'd seen them all, and you know, she was talking to me about them, which was really nice to know that somebody had watched them and paid attention. Yeah, I'd watched all of them. Yeah,
All the way through.
no, I'd done everything. I'd done a documentary, I'd done a comedy, I'd done, you know, and I was entering them into different competitions at the same time, you know, and I was pretty desperate for money as well, so it was a relief to have won that at that point. John Hurt was the judge that year, and he was brilliant. And it was at the time when I was still smoking, so I had a few smokes with John Hurt before in the morning at daybreak. It was really unhealthy, but it was quite good fun.
That's quite glamorous.
We had to go. So my whole crew were completely levered, and I was like stone cold sober. And it's really strange, isn't it, when you got people coming up into your face and you're like, I don't know who you are.
Yeah, it's quite weird.
Yeah, so that was really nice. And the Virgin do, I think it's brilliant. The awards night.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah,
right?
they really spoil all of the shortlisted, people.
And the previous winners as
and
well.
The previous winners. Yeah, it's a great.
It's a really good night.
Yeah, it's kind of like so. But then after that, I kind of started doing some stuff. Ironically, a week or so before, I was doing some stuff with the BBC, with a producer there who'd seen 220 and a few of my shorts, and said, "Oh, I met her on a panel that I was doing for another film competition called Co-Filmic up in Manchester." And she leant over to me during the panel and said, "I've got some work for you," you know, which is great, isn't it? So when you're doing a panel. So if you want to offer me any work, Caroline, just feel free. And then I started to do some stuff with the BBC. I did like 4 pilots for the BBC, and then I did some panel shows, studio-based stuff, which was strange because, you know, I've got no background at all in studio-based stuff, you know. I don't think they'll be asking me back, by the way, but we still did it. Yeah, and that's it, I suppose. Kind of like, it's only when you reflect back that you wouldn't have had all those opportunities if you hadn't have won Virgin, you know.
And you said you sort of knew what to expect, having won the People's Choice the year before, but for either of you, was there anything that you kind of thought, oh, in hindsight, I wish I'd been a bit more prepared with, you know, my next script to pull out of my pocket, or was there anything that you kind of feel, you know, for all the future winners who are out here, you know, that they should have prepared?
I think it's going to be unique to you and your personality. For me, I think that when I won, I started to overthink things, and now I'm going with a different approach of going, oh, just forget it and go and enjoy yourself, you know. And that's the way that I'm approaching it, and I think that's going to help me personally, and the way that I'll make future films. So I just need to go and do what we were doing anyway, but under the guidance of the people.
Yeah.
We're guerrilla. I came from a real guerrilla filmmaking background, you know, so rules and regulations are all new to me. But, you know, BBC have trained, you know, kicked that out of us somewhat, and working with the BFI, obviously, you've got to do things by the book. What about you?
I guess for me, it's interesting what you say about having the next script ready to go, because I've always been that sort of person where I get, if something isn't happening straight away, then I'll try and get other things ready or more ready, so that there's always something that could possibly happen or whatever. And but I'd already been working, not because I thought we were going to win, but just because I wanted to make another short after Mixtape. I'd already been working on a script that then evolved into the short I made with the prize money. But I wasn't really pitching it that night. It was more of just, I thought this was the next thing I wanted to do, and it was sort of building on Mixtape, and then that, you know, that became the short. But I think now, you know, I'm working on a feature that I'm writing, but then I'm also attached to other stuff that just to direct, or, you know, and I think Ben Wheatley said that he you know, with his projects, he's always got something to offer up, you know, next, which is why he's made, you know,
why it's so
Sightseers
prolific,
yeah, you know, because I think when an idea comes to him, he doesn't just write it down and think, oh, that's a good idea. I think he starts to develop things, and then I think he works with his wife as well. But I think, you know, that's a good thing to do when you're at a certain level. But I'm not sure it's that useful to have hundreds of short film scripts everywhere. I think maybe it's a good idea to actually make
think about progression.
No, that's probably one of my mistakes. I did have loads, so I was like, you know,
but you
Alan
made
Partridge
7,
going,
though,
monkey
you know.
tennis. Throwing loads of ideas. I've just had another one. But I think that, to add to that, I don't think there's any magic one moment for anybody in any industry. I think that you just move on to the next thing. You're gonna get a leg up, but that's about it. And then it's like, right,
that's true.
Go and do it again.
Yeah.
And
it's
then go and do
up
it
to you
again.
at the end of the day.
You know, but that's fine, because if you love making films and you know that's what you want to do, I think that's it's great to be getting paid for it, isn't it? You know?
Yeah.
So.
And Luke, how did you find the experience? You talked about using the prize money to go on and make another short. How did you find that experience? And tell us a little bit about the next film.
Yeah, I mean, it was really good. I'd never worked with the Film Council before, but friends of mine had, the then Film Council, the now BFI, and I'd just never done it. It wasn't a case of me feeling like rejected for not getting any of the digital shorts or anything. It was more a thing of, it never seemed to work out. And so I was really grateful for a sort of opportunity to work with the UK Film Council. So when that came up, I was really, excited. And then we went in and I pitched this idea that I'd already been working on, and then it was tweaked a little bit. And then I just sort of started working on the script with Rebecca Mark Lawson and Kate O'Hara. And I just, because I was writing it myself, it just went through various drafts, and essentially the idea was just to take Mixtape in terms of its tone, the musical themes, and the sort of theme of young love and romance. And I guess the reason I made Mixtape, essentially, aside from the Virgin Media Shorts thing, was that I'd seen lots of really gritty British shorts, and I'd come out of short film screenings feeling quite sort of bludgeoned by this issues-based drama thing. And not to say that they were bad films, they were always good films, but I just, it was just quite hard or grueling to watch them all. So I thought, it'd be really nice just to have a small film that is just quite breezy and just comes in the middle of all that, just so people can leave feeling slightly all right about the world and, things might be all right sort of thing. So all of that stuff went into Disco, which was the next thing, and that was the longest thing I'd made at that point, and it was 15 minutes. It turned out to be 15 minutes in the end. And Patrick, the first one I made, was like 11 minutes. And so, yeah.
So does that mean you've now worked out the optimum time for a duration for a short film?
They're just shorts are just weird things because I think a short is the length it should be, depending on the idea, if that makes sense. Because some shorts, in fact, a lot of shorts are too long, and I'm guilty of that as well. But I used to program for a short film festival, and I'd watch them coming in, and they were just so overlong. And I think that's something you learn as a filmmaker, obviously, but I think they can never be too short. And Roger Ebert said before, I think recently, that a good film's never too long and a bad film's never too short. Yeah. So I think that applies to shorts as well.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true. Well, we're not going to be able to judge whether you made it too long or too short, but we do have the trailer, I think, for Disco. So if we could run the next clip, please, that would be great. Thank you.
I can pick you up 9ish. 8. Okay.
Guess I'm alright. Guess I'm alright. I guess I'm.
It's a very short trailer.
Yeah.
Thank
It's a
you.
teaser.
And as you were saying, you're now sort of taking similar themes and world into developing a feature idea. So tell us a bit more about that.
I mean, I guess I started off making Mixtape by using my autobiographical memories or sort of thoughts of what it was like growing up in the 90s and music and stuff like that. And that comes through in Disco. And actually, the next thing I'm doing is my Mad Fat Diary for E4. So I'm going to do 2 episodes of that. And that, again, that helps me to get that, because that's set in 96 and the music is there and it's teens. And so all this stuff that I've already done is really bolsters my, credentials in terms of getting in the door for something like that. And then after that, I'm going to go back onto the feature, which I've been working on and has been through the BFI's development programme, and which I'm writing again, and which is essentially a sort of Britpop musical thing set in 1996 and follows a sort of band of 4 teenage kids who kind of want to be the next Britpop sensation. And it's more about really the protagonist, the lead singer's kind of encountering relationships and love and losing his virginity for the first time. It's sort of like The Commitments meets like Empire Records or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. But so that's the feature, yeah. But I've been writing that since straight after Disco. I was like, right, what's next? And I started writing The Wanderers, which is the name of the film, and expecting for it to happen, straight away, because I was worried about this 90s bandwagon thing, and the 90s are kind of coming back in a big way. So I didn't want to take ages for it to get out there. So. But then I started to realise and learn how long it takes to get a feature film made, and what
Forever.
and it's sort of I've not found it frustrating yet, and it's been 3 years, because I think it's just been really productive, and the script keeps getting better, and having the BFI on board is really good, and now doing Mad Fat Diary as well, it's going to give me 2 hours of directing, within that time period, within the era, to take with me into the film. So it's like, I think you just got to make those decisions and sort of figure out what's going to happen next. And the good thing about TV as well is that it's going to happen. I'm not going to wake up and someone's going to go, the money, someone's pulled the money out, or whatever those calls are. So Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. I've forgotten what it was now.
Yeah, no, I mean,
The film, yeah.
It does, absolutely. I mean, I'm interested to know from both of you, because I know that you both have aspirations to make feature films, amongst other things, but how important you think it is that the short films that you make are thematically or stylistically connected with your feature ideas. So in your case, Luke, obviously there's a very, a very clear link between the shorts that you've done and your feature ideas. I don't know whether that is the same for you, Jason?
Not at the moment, but I mean, I think that with the short that I'm working on now, there's potential for that to, to go down that route, where we put this idea in to iFeatures originally, and as a feature film pitch, and now we've written a short version of it that we're making with the prize money from 2011. I've still not spent it. And actually, one of the actors sent me a message on Facebook the other day saying, "Have you retired?" Which I thought was quite funny. I'm finally going to be getting round to making my film next month. And it's a comedy short, and I think that that's got potential to be developed into a feature, and I think that, Chris Collins sees it that way too. So we've got to do a good job on the short.
Yeah. Do you think, I could answer this question from a financier perspective, but do you feel that financiers generally are looking for that more in order to kind of finance features, that there's a kind of there's short film or other work which is tonally similar?
I think you've got to be realistic, isn't it? So it's a business at the end of the day, and people want to know how they're going to market an individual and their films, and so that's kind of, realistically how people will be looking at things. From my point of view, I was going, I'll just experiment and do a few of this, I'll do one of that, but people want to know, what do you want to make, and what do you really feel passionate about? And that's quite difficult if you don't feel very passionate about anything. So I was like, right, I get passionate about a film once we're, going to be making it, and before that I find it really difficult. And the same with the scripting process, because we improvise a lot. I like, it's hard for me to have something nailed down on a piece of paper, but really realistically no one's going to give you any money unless you can show them on the page what this is going to be,
Yeah, I think it is a tricky one with feature films, because the kind of the it's got to be a certain length, and it's got to have kind of certain arcs and structures, and I mean, maybe it's something that's easier to get away with in some ways in television, where the structures can be, even though the timings have to be more accurate, the overall structure, I think, can be a bit looser, especially if you've got a whole series to kind of play with characters, and because you've been doing a bit on the
I feel that we're learning now. It's been a learning process for me to be in that development, and I suppose that's what the development process is all about, isn't it? And I understand it, I know exactly, but even so, now we've got this script and we know that we're ready to go. I know that we won't shoot a lot of what's on the page, and we'll try to make it work, And I think that people will kind of structurally it'll be kind of the same. The structure will be the same, but I think that we're going to improv for performance. I think it's important with comedy that you have that flexibility, because if you don't, and you see it lots of time, when people are forcing home something that's a scripted joke that's just not working, and I think that you could probably tell on the set that it's not working, and if it's not working, you need to change it.
We're going to have a little look at actually some of the work that you have been doing, which has a much more kind of improvisational approach. So do you want to, just before we play the clip, do you want to just sort of tell people a little bit about what it was and how it came about? Yeah, this is a pilot that we did with the BBC with a comedian called Tom Binns, who does characters, and his character, he did one which was a spirit medium, which we did first of all, and then this one that I'm going to show now is his hospital radio DJ character called Ivan Brackenbury. And that's it.
From maternity to the morgue, from cardiovascular to urinogenital, this is Hospital Radio. Ivan Brackenbury! He's bonkers. He's bonkers. Ivan Brackenbury, the cheerful earful.
Hello, it's me, your friend of mine, Ivan Brackenbury, and we're live on a Thursday! Friday! Hang on a minute. Thursday! Saturday! You're gonna bear with me, because they're on a loop. Sunday! 1 minute. Monday! You'll have to bear with me. Oh, we've got the gremlins in this Thursday. Wednesday! Hang on. Thursday! 1966! Oh, hang on a minute. I do a real mix of shows. It's audience driven, and we have wacky wind-ups, requests and dedications, all my crazy features. We do radio dating, which was a brilliant idea where we try and get patients off of each other in the hospital. But I have done so much raising funds and stuff. I mean, I do a lot of children in need stuff, and I've done so much for children in need over the years that actually last year the BBC wrote to me personally asking me if I'd stop.
I really do rate hospital radio. It's essential, keeps people up to date with what's going on in the hospital.
It's very informative for patients. A bit of a lifeline for them into the outside world, I think, as well.
I love it, absolutely. I love a good wind-up situation. They're so funny. Anything that raises a laugh is just what you need. Love really hurts without you. Love really hurts without you. And it's breaking my heart, but what can I do?
My hero for the wacky wind-ups is probably Noel Edmonds back in the 80s and 70s, because he was brilliant at doing wacky wind-ups on members of the public. Not the ones where he ended up killing them, the other ones. And he also was quite famous for wearing wacky shirts and jumpers as well. And then he disappeared for a while, didn't he? And he came back to do that Deal or No Deal. And he wore quite boring shirts then. But I've noticed the wacky jumpers are coming back in again. So I think that means he's ready to kill again. Well, regular listeners to my hospital radio station will know that we have gone multi-faith now. We've all been on a course, which means we've got to be ever so sensitive now, because I know some of your faiths get very easily offended, especially the other ones, Christ. Anyway, which meant we did do Christmas and we had a right laugh, but of course a few months earlier we did Ramadan. Bam bam ba-da-dum. Ramadan.
We have volunteers that DJ on the radio station. It doesn't work quite as well as we'd like because I don't think as many people listen to it as we'd like.
I've got quite a high listener to DJ ratio, so if you go on like Radio 1 and stuff like that, they've got like loads of people listening, haven't they? So you can't give them the same attention that you can give them on hospital radio. Some of our programmes have a DJ to listener ratio of about 2 to 1. That's like 2 DJs for every listener. I've been wanting to be a DJ for as long as I can remember. I used to watch CFAX when I was little and pretend to read it out in a DJ voice, you know, and see if you could read the page before the page is flipped over. Just because I don't get paid for it, we're professional, and we're as professional as the professional DJs are. And I know the only difference between I'm a professional DJ, just like, you know, someone like Simon Mayo is a professional DJ. The only difference is he gets paid more than I do. I reckon some of the top DJs are on 14,000, 15,000 a year.
That's brilliant. I'm sure we could all have sat and watched.
Where's the commission?
I didn't get commission. They're fools.
Who should everyone write to?
Well, I'm going to make a film with him, with that character in September. So, why didn't they get commission? I've got to be careful what I say. TV comedy commissioning. Yeah.
We're. I mean, obviously, you've both got really a whole host of exciting things that you're planning to work on over the coming 12 to 18 months, and so we can look out for all those credits to come. But I'm going to, because we've got just under 15 minutes left for questions, and I can see hands are going up and people are keen to ask already. So Do we have questions?
Hi there. So it's kind of a question about Tom, actually. So I know him quite well. I've worked with him on the comedy thing, photographing him.
Right.
Just from a point of view of getting someone like Tom to do a film with, obviously had a little bit of a screw up over the whole broadcasting the Queen's speech on the radio. Does
Tom's
that
got a bit of a track record
yeah,
of being
I think it's twice
difficult.
now he's got canned from radio jobs. Is that really a concern when you're playing around with substantial budgets for this sort of thing, that you're going to have an artistic vision that's going to get screwed up by having someone do something maybe that's a little bit stupid?
I think that with comedy, conservatism doesn't really work. So I think you need to take risks, and I think that when people are funny, they're going to be willing to do that. And I think coming from a comedy background as well and making films with comedians, I kind of get where they're coming from. I can't really say I can understand from a producer's point of view that they're going to be a little bit nervous about it, but I think that that's the beauty of good comedy, is that it is a bit risky, and I think that when you water it down and you do stuff by numbers, you get what you've got now.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. Well, we can make a film with it.
Another question at the back. If you just want to wait for the mic so people can hear you, that would be great. Thank you.
Hi, I'm looking to make a short film for this competition, and I was wondering how long it took you to film, plan your 2-minute and 20 minute long films, and also could you tell me about a challenge that you had to overcome when you were filming it and how you did it? Thank you.
What was the first part again? It was
how long it took
to
plan and to film.
So our one was, I remember hearing about the competition with enough time to make a film, but not enough time necessarily to gestate and wait around and figure things out. So I was working at the company I mentioned earlier at the time. So on my lunch break, I wrote the script, and it was like 2.5 pages or something, because I'd already had the idea for so long. I knew exactly what it is that I wanted to do. So that it was just purely getting it on paper. And once I had it on paper, I tweaked it a little bit. And then it was literally a week from writing the script to the shoot date, which was a Sunday, I remember that. And then a week after that for post, and we delivered the film on like the Monday, and I think the deadline day was like the Wednesday. So 2 weeks all in all, which has its benefits because it's a concentrated period of time where you're really intensely trying to make this thing happen. Whereas if you've got 6 months to make a 2-minute film, there's all these kind of things that can shift around. People might not be available, whatever, So with a week to make it, I decided that was a good thing in terms of the energy and stuff. Plus, like I mentioned earlier, we already had a bit of money, so, we could realistically do it. Challenge to overcome was, I guess, because I produced Mixtape as well, and I've produced other projects, like some music video stuff and other stuff, when I really feel like I have to do it myself or it won't happen. And I think Mixtape was one of the first examples of that, and the short I did before that I did as well. So, but what comes with that on a low budget is suddenly you're in charge, or you're responsible for lots of different elements of the production. So for me, a challenge was finding a location that was a very specific, symmetrical location with 2 coloured doors that I've had in my head that I really wanted to have, so that the gag of him walking next door would work and would make sense. So I literally had to, I think it took me like a day or a day and a half. I was just walking around letter dropping houses in areas where I knew that there would be these 2 sort of coloured doors, and eventually, weirdly, a friend of mine had told another friend that I went to uni with that I was looking for this house, and she lived in one. So I ended up going to her house and looking at that. But I guess just it's pure. Sometimes it can be pure labour, sort of hard, graft, and so that was one of the challenges.
We shot over 4 nights. We were shooting out in Rusholme in Manchester. You were talking there about location. I think your locations can be really important for Virgin Shorts. And I knew that if we shot at night, I was going to get the most out of the DSLR cameras, and if we shot in a place that was neon lit, then that was going to work quite nicely too. And make it stand out from probably 90% of the other entries that go in, because most people will shoot in the day because of budgetary restrictions. So we shot over 4 nights from 11 o'clock till 4 in the morning in Rusholme, which is the Curry Mile in Manchester. And we made friends with lots of the guys there who owned shisha bars who didn't want credits. And and we met, you know, we shot it in a guerrilla way. But I think that kind of like with Virgin Shorts, I think the best thing to do is look at the previous winners and watch the structure of them, because they all follow a similar pattern, a similar structure, and nail your central themes for the short as well. Something that's going to evoke an emotion in a short space of time is going to work well, I think.
We were talking earlier as well about how they're essentially like gags or jokes, 2-minute long films, because you've got to establish something. It could be anything, but you've got to establish something, and then you've essentially got to pay that off or punchline it, you know. So
most of them have dialogue as well, or have minimal
dialogue, yeah. Which I think is good training for cinema, because you always want to try and do that. I think less than television, but but they've all got. I think all the good Virgin Media entries have this. Here's something, and then at the end there's a subversion or a twist, or you know, whatever it is, you know. And I quite like the genre thing as well. You know, yours is quite a specific genre piece, and
when we were making ours, I watched Black Coal and was going, okay, well, let's watch the structure of this and kind of figure out.
I think Black Coal's the most like a joke, isn't it? Because it is literally a joke.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and really well done though. So
it's brilliant. It's a brilliant film.
And then kind of like, you know, with Oscars and yours, I just was going, oh, you know, they've kind of sewn that up now. They've sewn that area up for me. So we had to think of a different theme. So other area and other territories that haven't been done yet is always good, you know.
I didn't know this as well, but I know that now that it has to be U rated, or is it PG rated? PG rated. So I didn't know that at all when I was doing mine. It was just a story I wanted to tell, but I know that obviously a lot of types of stories are sort of, you know, you can't do them because it has to be PG. So that's worth bearing in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's amazing how much story you can pack into such a short amount of time, and how much you kind of take away from that. I mean, you say they're very neat little structures, and they are, you know, kind of they are gag structures often, but there's so much that you kind of take away from them at the end of it too. Are there any other things? I mean, we talked a little bit about location and shooting at night. Are there any other things that obviously short films tend to be cheap to make? Yeah. Are there any other kind of tips that you've got for things that can have a real impact but don't cost money?
I think it's clear when you're having fun on set in a way. You know, so working with your friends and working with people that you're going to be familiar with is beneficial too. Because it's meant to be fun. It's meant to be a fun thing. You know, I don't think anyone should take it too seriously if they're putting an entry into Virgin Shorts in a way. I mean, we took it seriously, but not. You know, we were all there trying to have. You know, it was me with having a laugh with my friends. Yeah.
I think that goes for everything. Definitely everything I've done. You know, luckily I haven't been in a situation where I'm not having fun doing what I'm doing. But you know, every time I'm doing something, it's really important for me that I enjoy it, because if I don't, then I might as well not be doing it. But
I think that will come across in the finished piece somehow, you know. So
you won't have the sparks walking off the set.
No, you kind of look like a harmonious set, that's what I'm saying. What did you shoot on, by the way?
We shot on Red. It was the first Red that came out before the MX and the Epic. So, yeah. And we used... I don't know, I had a really good DP. I'd say that as a good tip, you know, aside from location and stuff, is that I used someone that I knew was proficient and could bring something to what I wanted to do. And we shot on Red, the original Red, with Cooke lenses, which is the first time I'd used Cookes, but since I you know, like, love them. And I learnt that because of this DP that I work with. And you know, I really wanted a dolly move on some shots, and again, he suggested this slider, which I'd never used before, and now is one of my favourite things to use as well. Yeah. It's just a track that goes, it's really good for tight sort of interior stuff. It's a thing that goes on top of the tripod that you literally slide the camera back and forwards on. So you don't lay track, you don't need a grip, you know, and so on. So
I like the fact that you've got a slider out, and I had like 2 B&Q PVC pipes and a wooden board with some skateboard wheels on it.
Yeah. Skateboard dollies are brilliant, you know.
Yeah, so-
But, you know, we had someone had to go and get a circular saw and was cutting, because we did actually as well have a dolly shop which was outside, so we had the slider for inside. But we had a spider dolly, which is not as homemade as a B&Q skate dolly, but you know,
it doesn't matter how you get there.
No,
does it?
exactly.
As long as
Yeah.
you know what you want.
The producer went off and got a circular saw. You know, the other producer was doing it with me. A circular saw from somewhere, and was cutting wedges for the dolly. You know, it's one of those things you just got to get on with it, and just if you need stuff, then you just got to find it. Yeah. And if you're producing or someone else is producing, and if they're resourceful, then you know you make it happen. Really, that's filmmaking all over, basically.
Do we have other questions?
Thanks. Hi. Well, you've kind of answered my question already, in a way, partly, and that's. I love both your films, and just like Black Hole as well, you have films that have an emotional angle and grip you emotionally, and you're hooked into the story in such a short space of time. But also, the thing that sets yours apart, I think, from a lot of the other films not in the top final 12, but in the competition, is that the production quality seems so good. It does look like the sort of films that you could see at the cinema, and they would fit in alongside the feature film. And partly that's, you know, besides the way you're telling the story, the you know, camera moves and but also the post-production. And I wondered, for me, I make things, and I try to do sometimes the post-production myself. I try to improve the sound, which is a very hard thing to do, and to grade myself. Can you say anything about your post-production? Because you mentioned that it took you 2 weeks to make the film, and I'm thinking, for a film like that, for me, it would take me a month to do the grading on myself.
Yeah, I mean, I have done stuff where I've taken on multiple roles, you know, and there is something to be said for that. But I also have learned along the way that, you know, there are people out there that are far better than me at colour grading, you know, cutting and so on. And I work with an editor now, and I work with an editor on Mixtape. And so all I did on Mixtape really was produce, wrote the script, and then directed the film. You know, so when we got into post, I had an editor that was working on it, that was cutting it, so he was handling that. He also graded it as well, actually. And we graded it in colour, which meant that we could do it all in the same place. We didn't, you know, ship it off to a colourist, because we didn't have the money at the time. And in terms of the other post, like sound, for example, we just made sure we had a good sound recordist. And, you know, I think on shorts, you can get a really good trained sound recordist from a film school for not much money. You know, if you give them a token fee, you know, I think that's a real thing you need, because the amount of times early on when I started out that you get bad sound, there's just nothing you can do with it. And, you know, Danny Boyle said recently that, like, sound is 70% of cinema or something. And it's true, you know, because if you get bad sound, it's going to tarnish your whole production, and there's only so much you can do with ADR and all that stuff. So, yeah, get a good sound recordist, and then everything else was pretty straightforward. Yeah, I mean, it didn't take long. We had to cut back the credits because we were like had to be dead on 2 minutes 20, so that's why the credits are like the shortest. It's like 11 frames or something.
I came from the opposite angle. I was laughing when I was watching it because.
Yours really long.
No, because we were going there. We'd already committed to making it exactly 2 minutes and 20 seconds. Yeah. So I got to the cut and I had like 10 seconds left. So I've got 10 seconds of a
So it should be called 2:10.
Stood in a road.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So, yeah, it should be 2:10 really, if you were going to cut that properly. But I did the edit myself. So I'm more like from you're, you know, so exactly as I said. I did, yeah, but, you know, I'm not very, you know, I was just guessing. I have no idea what I was doing. So, you know, I was so, and I think that Luke's right, you know, there are professionals, obviously, who can do it a lot better than you, but you also, if you're making your own short, you've got control if you cut it yourself. Although that must have, I think my partner just thought I was trying to get out of childcare, to be honest, but I was cutting that film. And actually, it was a day before the deadline that we got it back, and I got someone did the sound effects for me, and he put a soundtrack on it, and the soundtrack wasn't right, you know. But you can't, after somebody's put in 2-3 days worth of work for nothing, you can't say that's not right. So I asked for the sound effects just for the sound effects track, and then I built the music in about 4 or 5 hours. Just from the video co-pilot thing and just taking little bits and pieces and mixing stuff myself, and that's how we made the soundtrack for it. But I also used a Creative Commons track as well for the Indian track that I wanted to be coming in all the time, with a weird Southern Comfort I had in mind for that film. Have you seen that? And there's like Cajun music that's constantly coming in all the time and building up the suspense, and that's what I had in mind for that particular thing. So that was the reference point for that particular thing.
Well, thank you guys for sharing so generously your experiences and advice and tips on becoming a Virgin Media Shorts winner. And thanks again. Thank you for coming. Hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you, Caroline.
Virgin Media Shorts, championing undiscovered talent.